Thank you for joining the HOA Beat. I'm Cindy Sullivan with Key Community Management. This is Chris Gelwicks.
Hi.
He is with the Law Office of Moretz and Skufka. He's an attorney. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for letting me be here.
So today we want to talk about pool rules for homeowners associations. And it's that time of year. Here is April and we're working on getting all of our pools ready to be open. So it's a good topic to cover.
Sure. Do you get a lot of questions about what should be in your rules for the association?
We do, because there's some rules that are standard for the state, right? And then some things you just create.
That's true. And the board of directors for most associations has the ability to make rules. And there are some things that come easy when making these, but there are other topics that boards sometimes don't think about, or that things have been done a certain way for so long they just assume it's correct. One of the things that has been more recent in the law has been dealing with discrimination at pools. And when I say discrimination, I'm primarily focused on familial status. What I mean by that is, an example, having an adults-only swim time the last 10 minutes of an hour. I used to live in an association that actually to this day still has the last 10 minutes of every hour when the pool's open, they have an adults-only swim. Kids have to get out. Adults get in the pool. I loved it. There's cases out there that say that is that is discriminatory. You're discriminating against people with children. There's 2 federal cases on it, and so basically that type of rule violates the Fair Housing Act. It's an act that was formed in the 1960s to help with discrimination, to prohibit that type of thing when we're dealing with HOAs, and it was originally done for apartments. So that type of rule isn't something that would be acceptable under the FHA. Now, many people say, well, how do you deal with that? Because our people love that time, that last 10 minutes. One thing you can say is lap swimming only in the last 10 minutes of the hour. Now, do you have to go in and actually swim the laps? I don't know. It depends on how much you enforce it. But many kids don't want to go swim laps, so they want to get out. The adults would come in, and that might be one way around it. But it's not just familial status. There's other. It's not just that for familial status. It's other things. It's okay to have a kiddie pool, but you really shouldn't restrict it to just kiddies. Adults can go get in the pool. An adults-only pool, for an example, where you have 5 pools and you designate one as adults only, would probably violate the Fair Housing Act. I've seen this rule. Children who wear diapers are not allowed in the pool without appropriate swim diapers. Well, what happens when an adult has to wear diapers? I mean, it's those types of questions that are coming up. So you really have to rewrite that rule to say something like individuals who are incontinent must have appropriate swimwear before you can get in the pool.
So maybe a good idea, Chris, would be if a community is working on new rules, to have the law office that they work with review those. Because, there's things that we're not thinking of.
Right, and no one was thinking of these things for a long time. And so, like I said, for the example, again, the association I lived in, I'm sure they haven't had their attorney consulted on this. And so, I think an examination of your rules, one for reasonableness, making sure that the people who are allowed to use the pool can use it, is the first thing. Second, rules regarding safety. And if the focus of the rule is safety, then you can discriminate. If a child in an infant seat should not be allowed in the pool unattended. Well, you can make a rule like that because a child in an infant seat can't swim. That's pretty easy. So if the focus is safety, you're okay.
So what are some other things let's talk about the safety rules. Some other things that would be good. We had talked earlier about, no glass in the pool, no running, things like that.
And those are safety rules. Glass on the pool deck. I mean, you break a glass, somebody steps on it, they're going to get cut. That's a pure safety rule. There's no problem there. There's not going to be any issues. Things like no smoking. The board of directors, because it runs the association, has the ability to make rules governing the common area unless the Declaration of Covenants says otherwise. So an appropriate pool rule that prohibits smoking, the board can adopt that rule.
So that wouldn't be safety though, right? That would be maybe just to be courteous, to people in the area.
Correct.
Same with maybe, don't use profanity while you're at
Correct.
the pool, because there are families and children.
Correct, and
Okay.
those would be perfectly appropriate. Those would, because the board has that discretion.
Yeah.
And there's never been any challenge that I know of that has said no, that's an unreasonable rule. And again, when the courts look at it, it's going to be for reasonableness.
That's right. So much of what we do is really based on that. So what about pets?
Yeah,
There's
see,
different
for pets, it's interesting because you have the distinction between dogs and cats and whatever else, other animals, and service animals. And there's a big distinction there.
Yeah.
A service animal would not be classified as a pet. So you have a rule that says no dogs are allowed in the pool. Someone comes in with a service dog. You may not prohibit that person from coming in, and you may not prohibit that service dog because technically under the law that service animal is not a pet. Now, you can prohibit pets in general, and I think that would make sense. I mean, it's for cleanliness, sanitation, courtesy. That's appropriate, but you can't keep out service animals. That's a federal law.
Okay, right. So that's good. So what about a scenario? This unfortunately does come up a lot. You are having an issue in a community with trespassing. A couple of scenarios have come up. Either it's after hours, someone's jumping the fence. Maybe it's even in the off season. The pool has been drained. They're in there. There are cameras. We know who it is. So that's a scenario. And then another scenario might be, someone just broke in and threw some pool furniture in the pool. What's the best way to address those types of things?
I'm always an advocate of calling the police, and because that's their job. For someone who's coming into the pool after hours or off season, they have no business being there, whether they're members of the association or not. Call the police and have them come out and remove the individual. If they cause damage, there's criminal charges that can be related to that. There's also the association can take the remedial steps of holding a hearing, fining, and suspending privileges. For someone who jumps the fence and throws a couple pool chairs in the pool and leaves, is that something where you'd want to get police involvement? That's more of a judgment call. But there's always the ability, if you know who the person is, to call that person into a hearing, potentially levy a fine, and suspend their access. If they've damaged anything, suspend their access until they make restitution or pay back the damage. So that's always an option. Even if you call the police,
Right,
you
you
can
can do
also
both.
do that. Yes.
Well, what we also try to do is through communicating with newsletters, let the families know in the community if there is an issue that happens with trespassing, we can fine you up to $100 a day based on North Carolina law.
That's right.
You will be required to pay for the damages, you'll lose your pool access. So I think also it helps to communicate that before the pool season.
It's true.
And
Absolutely.
let them know, hey, this is serious.
That's right. And if you have cameras on site, you also want to, maybe we've already said this, but you want to let people know. Knowing that they're there can deter a lot of individuals.
Right.
So
That's a good point. Okay, well that's good stuff. I want to talk briefly about our question of the day. We have a question of the day that came in here. Guest policies for community pools. What I have found in my experience is there's really no guideline. The board just sort of makes up what they feel comfortable as far as the limiting the number of guests people can bring. So what's your recommendation on that?
Well, first thing you have to do is look at your restrictions. Is there a restriction that says an owner or a member is allowed to bring a certain number of guests? If that's what's in the restriction, then that's what you have to follow.
Yeah.
If the normally that's not in the Declaration of Covenants, and so then you fall back to the rule-making authority with the understanding that every member has the right to use the common area, right to use the pool, and to enjoy it. And normally enjoyment means going with other people, and that's why you normally go into a community with a pool, so you can go there bring guests, whatever. And so, again, it goes back to what I've said just a minute ago. You want to make a reasonable rule. Limiting people to one guest probably would be deemed unreasonable. Unless you've got 5,000 people in one pool. Then maybe, yeah, limiting to one guest would be appropriate. Otherwise, you would want to make a rule that limits the number of guests in proportion to what, the number of people that actually use it. Normally, you see something like 3 or 4 guests max are allowed. That would probably be very reasonable, and I don't see a court, having a problem with that. Mm-hmm. Again, it's all one of the size of the pool, the number of members that use it, and what's an appropriate number. Is it arbitrary? Yeah. Yeah. But short of paying thousands of dollars for a case study on how many people use the pool, the board's supposed to do what it can. So again, take the size of the community, the size of the pool, and the usage, and make that the guest rule appropriate and reasonable.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's good. Again, I say let's when we put something together, let's have the law office that we work with for the community review it.
I always like that. Yes, and quite frankly, that's good advice, because we deal with rules and regulations and restrictions all the time. That's what we do, and try to put a rule in the best light possible, and whether in wording or in numbers and things like that.
Very good. Well, thank you, Chris, for joining us today.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to the HOA Beat, helping you make your community great.